Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands with a worn rag, the familiar smell of starship fuel and metal shavings filling his nostrils. The repair bay of Station Omega-7 never slept, and neither did he, it seemed. Ships came and went at all hours, their crews desperate for quick fixes before jumping to the next system. He'd been working on the same cargo hauler for 3 days straight, trying to coax life back into its dying hyperdrive core. The message from the legal department had been sitting on his workbench for a week, unopened. Marcus knew what it contained, the final details of his uncle's estate. Uncle Henry had been the black sheep of the Chen family, disappearing into the Outer Rim territories 30 years ago to pursue what he called xenobiological research. The family had written him off as crazy, but Marcus had always admired his uncle's adventurous spirit. Finally, curiosity got the better of him. Marcus broke the seal on the official document and scanned through the legal jargon. Most of Henry's possessions were worthless. Outdated research equipment, a small fortune in unpaid debts, and a ramshackle laboratory on some forgotten moon called Xerion Prime. But one item caught his attention, a biological specimen in stasis, requiring immediate care and attention. Marcus laughed bitterly. Trust Uncle Henry to leave him something that would probably eat him alive. Still, the inheritance came with enough credits to pay off his debts and maybe even buy his own repair ship. All he had to do was travel to Xerion Prime and claim whatever weird creature his uncle had been studying. The journey to the Outer Rim took 2 weeks aboard a merchant vessel that had seen better decades. Marcus spent most of the trip in his cramped quarters, reading through his uncle's research notes on a battered data pad. The files were encrypted, but Marcus had inherited his uncle's password habits. The man had used the same combination for everything since Marcus was a child. What he found in those notes made his blood run cold. Uncle Henry hadn't just been studying alien life. He'd been trying to save it. Species after species had gone extinct in the Outer Rim, victims of a parasitic plague that swept through entire star systems like wildfire. The plague didn't just kill, it consumed everything organic, breaking down complex life forms into basic nutrients that fed something far worse. The final entry in Henry's notes was dated just 3 months ago. He'd found something on Xerion Prime, something immune to the plague, a creature unlike anything in the galactic databases, with DNA that seemed to actively resist the parasitic infection. Henry called it his miracle, but the notes ended abruptly with a single chilling line. "They've found me. If anyone reads this, save the pup. It's the key to everything." Xerion Prime looked exactly like the kind of place someone would go to disappear forever. The moon orbited a dying red giant, its surface scarred by ancient mining operations and abandoned research stations. Marcus's transport dropped him off at the only functioning landing pad, a rusted platform that had seen better centuries. The air was thin but breathable, tinged with the metallic taste of processed atmosphere. Henry's laboratory sat at the edge of a vast crater, a collection of prefab modules connected by sealed walkways. The security system recognized Marcus's genetic signature immediately. Apparently, Uncle Henry had been planning for this contingency. The airlock cycled open with a hiss, revealing corridors lined with empty specimen tanks and abandoned research equipment. Marcus found the stasis chamber in the laboratory's deepest level, humming quietly in the artificial twilight. Through the frosted viewing window, he could make out a small pale form curled up in suspended animation. The creature looked like a wolf pup, but unlike any terrestrial canine he'd ever seen. Its fur was pure white, almost translucent, and strange bioluminescent patterns pulsed slowly along its flanks. Even in stasis, it seemed to glow with an inner light. The chamber's control panel displayed a countdown timer, less than 6 hours of power remaining. Marcus's hands shook as he initiated the revival sequence, following the detailed instructions Henry had left behind. The process would take time, and there was no guarantee the creature would survive after months in stasis. While he waited, Marcus explored the rest of the laboratory. Henry's research had been extensive, walls covered with genetic sequences, protein analyses, and detailed studies of the parasitic plague that had devastated the Outer Rim. One particular section caught his attention, a collection of video logs showing Henry working with the wolf pup when it was even smaller, barely the size of a house cat. In the recordings, Henry spoke directly to the camera, his eyes bright with excitement and fear. "Day 47 with the specimen," he said in one log. I've named her Luna because of the way she glows. She's definitely not from any known species, but her DNA contains sequences I've never seen before. More importantly, she seems completely immune to the plague parasites. When I exposed tissue samples to infected material, her cells actually destroyed the parasites instead of being consumed by them. Another log, dated weeks later, showed Henry's growing concern. The consortium ships have been scanning this system for 3 days now. They know I'm here and they know what I've found. Luna isn't just immune to the plague, I think she might be the cure. Her genetic structure could hold the key to developing a treatment, maybe even a vaccine, but they'll never let that happen. Too much money in quarantine protocols and restricted travel zones. The final log was barely audible, Henry whispering urgently into the camera. If something happens to me, Luna needs someone who understands machines, someone who can build what she needs to survive. The parasites aren't just biological. They're partly mechanical, nanotechnology from some dead civilization. Luna's immunity comes from her unique bioelectric field, but she'll need technological support as she grows. Marcus always understood how things worked, how to fix what others had given up on. I hope he'll understand this too. The stasis chamber beeped softly, indicating the revival process was complete. Marcus watched nervously as the preservation fluid drained away, and the chamber door began to open. The wolf pup stirred slowly, her strange eyes opening to reveal irises that shifted between silver and blue like liquid metal. She was smaller than he'd expected, probably weighing less than 10 pounds, but there was an intelligence in her gaze that made Marcus's breath catch. Luna looked up at him with those alien eyes, and Marcus felt something shift in his understanding of the universe. This wasn't just some exotic pet his uncle had left him. This was a living weapon against a plague that had killed billions. And somehow a simple mechanic from the inner systems had just become responsible for the most important creature in the galaxy. Luna's first steps out of the stasis chamber were unsteady, like a newborn learning to walk. Marcus knelt down slowly, not wanting to frighten her, but the wolf pup showed no fear. Instead, she padded over to him with curious sniffs, her nose twitching as she explored his scent. When she finally looked up at him, Marcus could swear he saw recognition in those strange, shifting eyes. The laboratory's automated systems chimed a warning. The power grid was failing faster than expected. Marcus realized he had maybe 2 hours before the entire facility went dark. He needed to gather everything important and get Luna off this moon before the consortium ships Henry had mentioned decided to investigate the power fluctuations. Working quickly, Marcus loaded Henry's research files onto portable drives while Luna explored her new freedom. She moved with an odd grace, as if gravity affected her differently than it should. Her paws made no sound on the metal floor, and the bioluminescent patterns on her fur pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Most unsettling was the way electronic equipment seemed to respond to her presence. Screens flickered, data streams flowed faster, and the laboratory's aging computers suddenly ran smoother than they had in years. Marcus was copying the final batch of research data when Luna suddenly went rigid, her fur standing on end. A low growl rumbled from her throat, and the patterns on her flanks shifted from soft blue to angry red. Every screen in the laboratory suddenly displayed the same message. Incoming vessels, hostile signatures detected. Through the laboratory's observation windows, Marcus could see 3 sleek ships descending through Xerion Prime's thin atmosphere. They bore the black and gold markings of the Galactic Consortium Security Division, the same organization that had been hunting. Henry Marcus had maybe 20 minutes before they reached the laboratory. He grabbed an emergency survival pack and scooped Luna into his arms. She was surprisingly light, her body temperature slightly cooler than a normal mammal. As they moved through the laboratory corridors, Luna's presence seemed to activate dormant systems. Emergency lighting flickered to life. Sealed doors opened automatically, and hidden passages revealed themselves, as if the building itself was helping them escape. The laboratory had a small hangar bay with Henry's personal transport, a modified courier ship that looked like it had been built from spare parts and determination. Marcus had piloted similar vessels during his service years, but this one had modifications he'd never seen before. The engine core hummed with an energy signature that didn't match any known power source, and the hull was lined with some kind of crystalline material that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. Luna jumped into the pilot's seat as if she belonged there, her small paws somehow activating the ship's startup sequence. The control panels lit up with symbols that weren't in any galactic language Marcus recognized, but somehow he understood their meaning. The ship's computer spoke in Henry's voice, explaining that it had been programmed to respond to Luna's bioelectric field and any genetic relatives of the Chen family. Marcus strapped himself in just as the first consortium ship landed near the laboratory entrance. Through the hangar's windows, he could see armed figures in environmental suits moving toward the facility. These weren't just security forces. Their equipment looked military-grade, designed for serious combat operations. The modified courier ship lifted off with surprising smoothness, its unconventional engines producing barely any thrust signature. Marcus had expected the consortium ships to immediately pursue them, but their sensors seemed unable to lock onto the strange vessel. Luna sat beside him, her eyes fixed on the tactical display, and Marcus realized she understood exactly what was happening. They cleared Xerion Prime's gravity well, just as the consortium forces breached the laboratory. Marcus watched on the rear monitors as the soldiers swept through Henry's facility, their movements efficient and professional. They weren't just looking for research data, they were sanitizing the entire site, destroying any evidence of what Henry had discovered. Luna whimpered softly, and Marcus reached over to scratch behind her ears. Her fur was incredibly soft, but he could feel the subtle vibration of some kind of energy field running through it. Where his fingers touched her, the ship's controls seemed to respond more smoothly, as if Luna was somehow interfacing with the vessel's systems. The navigation computer offered several destination options, but Marcus chose the one that made the most sense: Freeport Station, a neutral trading post in the Kepler sector. It was far enough from consortium space to be relatively safe, and Marcus had contacts there who could help him figure out what to do next. The journey would take 4 days, giving him time to study Henry's research and understand exactly what he'd inherited. During the first day of hyperspace travel, Marcus discovered that caring for Luna was unlike anything he'd experienced. She didn't eat normal food. Instead, she seemed to absorb energy directly from the ship's power systems. When she rested, small tendrils of bioelectric current flowed from her fur into the nearest control panels, and the ship's efficiency ratings actually improved. It was as if she was fine-tuning the systems at a molecular level. Luna also displayed an unsettling level of intelligence. She quickly learned to operate the ship's basic functions, her small paws dancing across control panels with startling precision. When Marcus tried to access encrypted sections of Henry's research, Luna would place her paw on the security reader, and the files would unlock automatically. Her genetic structure wasn't just immune to the parasitic plague, it was a living key to technology Marcus barely understood. The most disturbing discovery came on the second day. Marcus was reviewing Henry's video logs when Luna suddenly jumped onto the console and activated a hidden file. The recording showed Henry in the final days before his death, looking haggard and desperate. But he wasn't alone. Luna was there, fully grown and magnificent, her white fur blazing with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like a living constellation. "This is my final message," Henry said to the camera, while adult Luna sat beside him with an almost human expression of concern.
"Luna isn't just immune to the plague, she's its opposite.
Where the parasites consume and destroy, she creates and heals. But her power comes with a terrible cost. To reach her full potential, she needs to bond with someone, and that bond will change them both in ways I can't predict." The recording showed Henry placing his hand on Luna's head, and Marcus watched in shock as tendrils of light flowed between them. Henry's hair began to turn white, and his eyes took on the same metallic sheen as Luna's. The bonding process allows her to share her immunity, but it also makes the human partner a target. The consortium will never stop hunting us because we represent the end of their control over the Outer Rim territories. Adult Luna looked directly into the camera, and Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Those were the same eyes that now watched him from across the ship's cabin, ancient, intelligent, and completely alien. The recording ended with Henry explaining that he'd found a way to return Luna to her puppy state, preserving her essence while hiding her true power until someone worthy could claim her inheritance. Marcus looked at the small wolf pup, sleeping in the co-pilot's seat, and realized his uncle had been planning this for years. Luna wasn't just a biological specimen. She was a weapon against the plague, a living cure that could save billions of lives. But she was also bait, designed to lure in the one person Henry trusted to continue his work. As they dropped out of hyperspace near Freeport Station, Marcus made a decision that would change his life forever. He reached over and gently placed his hand on Luna's sleeping form, feeling the subtle vibration of her bioelectric field. Whatever came next, they would face it together. After all, he was just a mechanic, but mechanics knew how to fix things that others had given up on. And the galaxy needed fixing more than ever. Freeport Station buzzed with the usual chaos of neutral space: smugglers, merchants, refugees, and those who simply wanted to disappear for a while. Marcus docked Henry's modified courier ship in a remote berth, paying extra for privacy shields and no questions asked. Luna stayed close to his side as they walked through the crowded corridors, her small form hidden beneath a modified maintenance jacket Marcus had fashioned into a carrier. The station's atmosphere felt different with Luna nearby. Electronic systems hummed more efficiently, aging power conduits carried cleaner energy, and even the recycled air seemed fresher. Marcus noticed other subtle changes too. His reflection in the polished surfaces looked sharper, his movements felt more coordinated, and his understanding of the complex systems around him had somehow deepened overnight. Marcus's first stop was the information broker district, where Kaya Okonkwo ran the most discreet data trading operation in 3 sectors. Kaya was an old friend from Marcus's military days, someone who'd saved his life more than once during the border wars. If anyone could help him understand what the consortium was really after, it would be her. Kaya's office occupied a cramped space between a black market cybernetics clinic and a restaurant that served food of questionable origin. She looked up from her multiple data screens as Marcus entered, her cybernetic eye scanning him automatically before her expression shifted to surprise. "Marcus Chen," she said, leaning back in her chair. "You look different. Healthier somehow. And what's with the bioelectric readings? My sensors are picking up energy signatures that shouldn't exist." Luna poked her head out of the carrier, and Kaya's cybernetic eye immediately focused on her. The station's veteran information broker had seen everything the galaxy had to offer, but her expression showed genuine amazement as she studied the wolf pup. "That's not a normal creature," Kaya said quietly. "My scanners can't even classify it. The energy patterns are completely alien, but there's something familiar about them too. Where did you find her?" Marcus explained about Henry's inheritance, carefully leaving out the details about Luna's true nature and the parasitic plague research. Even so, Kaya's expression grew increasingly serious as she listened. When he finished, she pulled up several holographic displays showing consortium fleet movements and communication intercepts. "Your uncle made some very powerful enemies," Kaya said. "The consortium has been systematically destroying Outer Rim research facilities for the past 6 months. They're calling it a contamination protocol, but the pattern suggests they're looking for something specific. Several independent scientists have disappeared, and their research into exotic biological specimens has been classified at the highest levels." She highlighted a section of intercepted communications. 3 days ago, a consortium security team reported the complete sterilization of a research facility on Zirian Prime. They found evidence of Class X biological containment breach and recommended immediate sector quarantine. "That's your uncle's lab, isn't it?" Marcus nodded, feeling a chill run down his spine. Luna shifted in the carrier, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with what seemed like agitation. The information broker's equipment suddenly displayed a flood of new data, encrypted files, hidden communication channels, and classified reports that shouldn't have been accessible to civilian systems. "How did you access those files?" Kaya asked, staring at her screens in disbelief. Marcus looked down at Luna, whose eyes had taken on the same metallic sheen he remembered from Henry's final recording. "I think she's helping," he said simply. The decrypted data revealed the true scope of the consortium's operation. The parasitic plague hadn't been a natural phenomenon. It was the result of failed experiments with ancient nanotechnology discovered in the ruins of a dead civilization. The consortium had been trying to weaponize the technology for decades, but every attempt had resulted in uncontrolled outbreaks that consumed entire colonies. Luna's interference with the data systems revealed something even more disturbing. The plague parasites weren't just destroying organic life. They were consuming it to fuel some kind of vast network. Deep space monitoring stations had detected energy transmissions emanating from infected systems, all pointing toward a location in the galactic core where something massive was awakening. "This is bigger than biological warfare," Kaya whispered, scrolling through the intercepted files. "They're feeding something that's been waiting in the dark between stars for millions of years." Luna jumped out of her carrier and onto Kaya's desk, her small paws touching the holographic displays. The images shifted and changed, showing star charts with infection patterns that formed geometric shapes across space. The parasitic outbreaks weren't random. They were following specific pathways, creating a network that connected dozens of star systems like neural pathways in a vast brain. Marcus realized that Henry's research had uncovered something the consortium desperately wanted to hide. Luna wasn't just immune to the plague, she was actively disrupting the network. Her presence caused the parasites to malfunction, breaking the connections between infected systems and starving whatever entity waited in the galactic core. The revelation was interrupted by an emergency alert echoing through the station. Kaya's security systems detected 3 consortium vessels approaching Freeport Station, their transponders identifying them as customs enforcement. But the weapon signatures suggested they were carrying enough firepower to reduce the station to debris. "They tracked you here," Kaya said, her fingers flying across her control interfaces. "Station administration is already rolling over. They're giving the consortium permission to conduct routine biological hazard inspections, starting with the docking bays." Marcus looked at Luna, who had begun to glow more brightly. The patterns on her fur were shifting rapidly, and every electronic device in the office was responding to her presence. She looked up at him with those ancient, intelligent eyes, and Marcus felt a strange certainty settle over him. "They can't have her," he said quietly. "Whatever she is, whatever she represents, the galaxy needs her more than the consortium does." Kaya was already pulling emergency supplies from hidden compartments. "There's a maintenance shaft that connects to the old mining levels. If you can reach the industrial sector, there are ships there that don't appear on official manifests. But you'll need to move fast. My sensors show consortium troops are already boarding the station." As if responding to the urgency, Luna's bioluminescent pattern suddenly blazed with brilliant light. Every screen in the office displayed the same message: "System integration complete, defensive. Protocols activated." The station's lights flickered as massive amounts of power redirected through circuits that shouldn't have been able to handle the load throughout Freeport Station. The consortium's scanning equipment began to malfunction. Their biological sensors returned false readings. Their weapon targeting systems locked onto phantom signatures, and their communication arrays struggled with interference that seemed to shift and adapt to their countermeasures. Luna wasn't just hiding, she was actively fighting back, turning the station's own systems into weapons against the intruders. Marcus scooped Luna back into her carrier, feeling the subtle vibration of energy flowing between them. His reflection in Kaya's polished desk showed the first signs of change, a thin strand of white appearing in his dark hair, and a faint metallic glint in his eyes. The bonding process Henry had described was beginning, and there would be no turning back. "Whatever you've gotten yourself into," Kaya said as she sealed the entrance to the maintenance shaft, "it's going to change everything. The consortium won't stop hunting you, and from what I've seen in those files, there are things out there much worse than them." Marcus looked down at Luna, whose small form radiated warmth and an alien kind of comfort. "Then we'll have to be ready for them," he said. "After all, someone has to fix what's broken, even if it's the entire galaxy." The maintenance shaft led into darkness, but Luna's gentle glow provided enough light to see by. Behind them, the sounds of the consortium search grew more distant, but Marcus knew this was only the beginning. They were no longer just running from the authorities. They were carrying the key to humanity's survival, and every enemy in the galaxy would be coming for them. The maintenance tunnels beneath Freeport Station were a maze of forgotten passages and abandoned infrastructure. Marcus followed Luna's instinctive navigation through the darkness, her bioluminescent patterns providing just enough light to avoid the worst hazards. She seemed to know exactly where they were going, leading him through shortcuts that bypassed the main search areas, where consortium troops were methodically hunting for them. After an hour of crawling through cramped spaces, they emerged in the station's industrial sector, a collection of automated manufacturing plants and cargo processing facilities that operated with minimal human oversight. Luna immediately padded toward a specific hangar bay, her nose twitching as she tracked something Marcus couldn't detect. Inside the hangar sat a ship unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. It appeared to be a hybrid of human engineering and alien technology, its hull covered with the same crystalline material that had lined Henry's courier vessel. But this ship was larger, more sophisticated, with weapon systems that seemed to grow organically from the superstructure. A faded registration showed it belonged to someone named Dr. Elena Vasquez, but the vessel had clearly been modified far beyond its original specifications. Luna approached the ship's boarding ramp, which descended automatically at her presence. The interior was a fascinating blend of research laboratory and military vessel, with equipment that seemed to bridge the gap between biology and technology. Scientific workstations sat alongside tactical displays, and the walls were lined with specimens tanks containing things Marcus didn't recognize. A holographic figure materialized in the ship's central command area, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and silver-streaked hair. Her image flickered slightly, suggesting the recording was old and partially corrupted. "If you're seeing this message, then Henry is dead, and Luna has chosen a new partner," the hologram said. "My name is Elena Vasquez, and I was Henry's research colleague until the consortium destroyed my career and murdered my team. This ship contains everything we learned about the parasitic plague and the entity it serves." The hologram gestured to the laboratory equipment around them. "Luna isn't the only survivor of her species. She's the last of an ancient race that once fought the plague across multiple galaxies. Her people called the enemy the Void Hunger, a collective consciousness that consumes entire civilizations to fuel its expansion into our dimension. The parasites are just its scouts preparing suitable worlds for consumption." Marcus felt Luna press against his leg, her warmth somehow reassuring despite the horrifying implications of Elena's words. The hologram continued, showing star charts that displayed the plague's progression across the Outer Rim territories. "The consortium knows what's coming, but they think they can control it," Elena explained. "Their leadership has been corrupted, convinced that they can become partners with the Void Hunger instead of its victims. They're wrong, of course. The entity doesn't make alliances, it only feeds." The ship's automated systems came online as Luna explored the command interfaces, her small paws activating controls with practiced ease. Marcus realized this vessel had been designed specifically for her, with controls scaled to accommodate both human hands and her unique biology. Every system seemed to respond to her bioelectric field, creating a symbiotic relationship between pilot and ship that went far beyond normal crew interfaces. Elena's hologram shifted to show detailed biological scans of Luna's physiology. Luna's immunity to the plague comes from her species' evolutionary adaptation to the Void Hunger. Her cells can not only resist the parasites but actively transform them into beneficial symbiotic organisms. In theory, she could cure entire infected worlds simply by establishing a strong enough bioelectric field around them. But there was a catch, as Marcus was beginning to expect. The hologram showed energy readings that spiked dramatically as Luna's influence expanded. The bonding process with a human partner amplifies her abilities exponentially, but it also makes her a beacon that the Void Hunger can detect across vast distances. The stronger Luna becomes, the more attention she'll attract from things far worse than the consortium. Marcus looked down at Luna, who had grown noticeably larger since their escape from Xerion Prime. Her paws were more defined, her movements more coordinated, and the bioluminescent patterns on her fur had become more complex. The changes weren't just physical. He could feel her presence in his mind, a warm consciousness that seemed to complement his own thoughts rather than overwhelming them. The ship's tactical systems suddenly activated, displaying incoming threat signatures. 3 consortium vessels had found the industrial sector and were conducting systematic searches of every hangar bay. Marcus had maybe 10 minutes before they reached this location. Luna padded over to the pilot station and placed her paws on the neural interface controls. The ship's systems integrated with her consciousness immediately, displaying information in ways Marcus found intuitive despite never having seen the technology before. Engine specifications, weapon capabilities, and navigation options flowed through his awareness as if he'd been piloting hybrid vessels his entire life. Elena's hologram flickered back to life, apparently triggered by the threat detection systems. "If you're forced to run, Head for the sanctuary worlds in the Vega sector. My colleagues there have been developing countermeasures against the plague, and they'll help you understand Luna's full potential. But be warned, the journey will be dangerous. The consortium has corrupted elements within every major government, and the Void Hunger's influence is spreading faster than anyone realizes. The hangar bay doors began to cycle open as consortium troops approached the outer perimeter. Marcus strapped himself into the pilot's seat, while Luna settled into what was obviously her designated station. Her neural connection to the ship deepened, and Marcus felt their awareness merge in ways that should have been terrifying, but instead felt completely natural. The hybrid vessel lifted off with impossible silence, its alien propulsion systems producing no detectable thrust signature. Through the ship's enhanced sensors, Marcus could see the consortium troops entering the hangar bay just seconds after their departure. Their scanning equipment showed nothing but empty space, unable to detect the advanced stealth systems that Luna's presence had activated. As they cleared Freeport Station's traffic control zone, Marcus realized the true scope of what Henry and Elena had been planning. This wasn't just about saving one unique creature. It was about preserving the galaxy's only hope against an enemy that had already destroyed countless civilizations. Luna wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. She was a living symbol of resistance, proof that the Void Hunger could be defeated. The ship's long-range sensors detected dozens of consortium vessels moving through nearby systems, all converging on their last known location. But there were other signatures too. Strange energy readings from the deep void between stars, and gravitational anomalies that suggested massive objects moving through hyperspace. The Void Hunger was already responding to Luna's reappearance, mobilizing forces that made the consortium's fleet look like toys. Luna looked up at Marcus with those ancient, shifting eyes, and he felt a moment of perfect understanding pass between them. They were no longer just trying to survive. They were racing against time to reach the sanctuary worlds before the real war began. Every day Luna grew stronger, and every day the forces arrayed against them grew more desperate and dangerous. The ship's navigation computer charted a course through the most dangerous regions of space, areas where pirates and worse things made travel nearly impossible. But Marcus felt confident in their hybrid vessel's capabilities and Luna's intuitive grasp of the ship's systems. They had something their enemies didn't understand, a partnership that transcended species barriers and represented everything the Void Hunger sought to destroy. As they jumped into hyperspace, Marcus caught his reflection in the command console's polished surface. More of his hair had turned white, and his eyes now held the same metallic sheen as Luna's. The bonding process was accelerating, changing him in ways he was only beginning to understand. But for the first time since inheriting his uncle's legacy, Marcus felt ready for whatever came next. After all, some things were worth fighting for, even if it meant becoming something more than human in the process. The journey to the Vega sector took them through the notorious Scar Nebula, a region where normal space had been torn apart by some ancient catastrophe. Here, the laws of physics bent in unpredictable ways, and ships that entered the nebula's depths often emerged changed, if they emerged at all. It was also the perfect place to lose pursuing consortium vessels. Luna had grown significantly during their 3-day journey, now the size of a full wolf but retaining her puppy-like curiosity and playfulness. Her bioluminescent patterns had evolved into complex geometric designs that pulsed in rhythm with the ship's systems, and Marcus found himself able to understand her communications without words. She was becoming more than just intelligent. She was becoming truly sapient with thoughts and emotions that complemented his own. The changes in Marcus were equally dramatic. His hair was now completely white, and his eyes held the same shifting metallic quality as Luna's. But more importantly, his understanding of technology had expanded exponentially. He could see the underlying patterns in the ship's hybrid systems, anticipate mechanical failures before they occurred, and interface with alien technology as if he'd been born to it. Their enhanced capabilities were tested when they encountered a derelict cargo hauler drifting near the nebula's edge. The vessel's distress beacon was weak, suggesting the crew had been stranded for days. Against his better judgment, Marcus decided to investigate. Human lives were at stake, and despite everything they'd learned about the plague, he couldn't ignore people in distress. The cargo hauler's crew consisted of 5 survivors from what had originally been a complement of 30. Captain Sarah Morrison was a veteran spacer whose weathered face told stories of decades spent in the dangerous regions between civilized systems. Her crew was a mix of refugees and traders, all fleeing from something they refused to discuss directly. We were carrying medical supplies to the Kepler colonies, Morrison explained, as Marcus and Luna boarded their ship. 3 days ago, we received a priority distress call from the mining station at Kepler 7. When we arrived, we found the entire facility overrun with some kind of parasite infestation. Luna's reaction was immediate and violent. Her fur stood on end, the patterns on her flanks shifting to angry red, and a low growl rumbled from her throat. The ship's lights flickered as her bioelectric field spiked with agitation. She padded toward the cargo hauler's medical bay, her enhanced senses detecting something the human crew had missed. Inside the medical bay, Morrison's crew had set up isolation units for 3 unconscious passengers, survivors from the mining station who had been rescued during the evacuation. They appeared to be in stable condition, but Luna's continued agitation suggested otherwise. She approached the nearest isolation unit and placed her paw against the transparent barrier. The unconscious patient convulsed suddenly, and Marcus watched in horror as thin metallic tendrils began emerging from the person's skin. The parasites were still active, dormant but not dead, waiting for the right conditions to resume their consumption of the host. Within hours, they would have overwhelmed the survivor's immune system and begun converting organic matter into the raw materials needed to reproduce. Luna's presence caused the parasites to react defensively, their metallic forms writhing as they tried to retreat deeper into the host's body. But her bioelectric field was already disrupting their cellular structure, causing them to break down at the molecular level. The process was fascinating and terrifying. Marcus could see the parasites literally dissolving as Luna's immunity field expanded around them. "What is she?" Morrison asked, staring as Luna continued her work on the infected patients. Marcus realized there was no point in maintaining secrecy. These people had seen the plague firsthand, and they deserved to understand what they were fighting against. He explained Luna's nature and their mission to reach the sanctuary worlds, though he kept the details about the void hunger deliberately vague. Morrison's reaction surprised him. Instead of fear or disbelief, the captain's expression showed grim determination. "We've been running from these things for 3 months," she said. "Started with a single infected cargo container that got loose in our hold. We managed to jettison it, but not before the parasites had sampled our crew. They've been hunting us ever since, somehow tracking us across multiple star systems." The revelation made Marcus's blood run cold. The parasites weren't just consuming organic matter. They were gathering intelligence, learning about human technology and movement patterns. Every infected world fed information back to the collective consciousness, building a detailed map of civilized space. Luna finished treating the infected patients, her bioelectric field gradually returning to normal. As the last parasites dissolved into harmless organic compounds, the survivors would live, but they'd been changed by the experience. Marcus could see subtle alterations in their cellular structure, modifications that would make them immune to future parasite infections, but also serve as a beacon for Luna's unique energy signature. "You can't take them with you," Morrison said, understanding the implications immediately. "They're tagged now, marked by whatever process she used to cure them. The parasites will be able to track them anywhere in the galaxy." Marcus nodded reluctantly. It was the same problem Elena's hologram had warned them about. Luna's power came with consequences that put innocent people at risk. Every person she cured became a potential liability, a way for their enemies to trace their movements across space. But Morrison had a different proposal. "My crew and I have been fighting these things for months. We know their patterns, their weaknesses, and we've developed some effective countermeasures. Let us help you reach the sanctuary worlds. In exchange, you teach us everything you know about the parasites and how to fight them." The idea had merit. Morrison's cargo hauler was fast and well-armed, with a crew experienced in evading pursuit. More importantly, they could serve as decoys, drawing attention away from Luna while Marcus continued toward their destination. It was a dangerous proposition, but the alternative was leaving these people to face the plague alone. Luna looked up at Marcus, and he felt her agreement flow through their mental connection. She understood the tactical advantages of having allies, even if those allies couldn't fully comprehend what they were fighting against. Her intelligence had evolved far beyond simple animal cunning. She was thinking strategically now, planning for battles that hadn't yet begun. The next few hours were spent transferring supplies and information between the two ships. Morrison's crew watched in amazement as Luna demonstrated her ability to interface with their vessel's systems, improving efficiency and revealing hidden capabilities they hadn't known existed. In return, they shared their hard-won knowledge about parasite behavior and the early warning signs of infestation as they prepared to separate Morrison's ship heading toward the inner systems to spread word about the plague, while Marcus and Luna continued toward the sanctuary worlds. The cargo hauler's long-range sensors detected multiple contact signatures approaching their position. The energy readings matched consortium vessels, but there was something different about them. The ships were moving in perfect formation, their course corrections synchronized in ways that suggested non-human coordination. "Those aren't normal consortium crews," Morrison said, studying the tactical displays. "The flight patterns are too precise, too coordinated. It's like they're being controlled by a single mind." Marcus felt Luna's presence sharpen in his awareness, her ancient memories stirring with recognition. Through their bond, he glimpsed images of similar formations from millions of years ago, fleets of converted vessels serving the Void Hunger's expansion across distant galaxies. The entity wasn't just influencing the consortium's leadership, it was beginning to directly control their ships and crews. The approaching vessels altered course suddenly, converging on their position with predatory intent. There was no more time for planning or preparation. Marcus grabbed Luna and rushed back to their hybrid ship, while Morrison's crew prepared for battle. The real war was beginning, and they were about to discover whether humanity's alliance with Luna would be enough to turn the tide against an enemy that had conquered entire galactic civilizations. As both ships powered up their engines and prepared to run, Marcus caught a final glimpse of the approaching consortium fleet. The vessels moved with inhuman precision, their hulls showing modifications that looked disturbingly organic. The Void Hunger was no longer content to work through intermediaries. It was making its presence known directly, and the galaxy would never be the same. The chase through the Scar Nebula became a deadly game of three-dimensional chess played at impossible speeds. Morrison's cargo hauler drew the pursuing consortium fleet away from Marcus and Luna, but the corrupted vessels showed capabilities that defied normal physics. They moved through the nebula's distorted spacetime, without the navigation difficulties that plagued normal ships, suggesting their crews, or whatever controlled them, had access to knowledge beyond current human understanding. Marcus watched the running battle on his long-range sensors, while Luna worked frantically at the ship's navigation systems. Her consciousness had expanded to encompass the entire vessel, allowing her to anticipate the nebula's shifting gravitational anomalies and plot courses through regions that should have been impossible to navigate. But even with her enhanced abilities, they were being gradually overtaken by pursuers who seemed immune to the nebula's chaotic effects. The breakthrough came when Luna suddenly disconnected from the navigation console and padded over to what appeared to be a decorative crystal formation built into the ship's central command area. Marcus had assumed it was some kind of alien artwork, but as Luna placed her paws against its surface, the crystal began to pulse with the same bioluminescent patterns that covered her fur. The ship's entire energy signature changed. Instead of running from the nebula's gravitational distortions, they began riding them, using the twisted spacetime as a highway through dimensions normal ships couldn't access. Marcus felt his consciousness expand beyond the confines of his human awareness, seeing the nebula not as empty space but as a living network of energy pathways created by some ancient catastrophe. Through Luna's enhanced perceptions, he glimpsed the truth about the Scar Nebula. It wasn't the result of a stellar explosion or cosmic collision. It was a battlefield scar from the last war against the Void Hunger, millions of years ago. Luna's ancestors had made their final stand here, using weapons that tore holes in space-time itself to prevent the entity from expanding into this galaxy. The crystalline formations throughout the nebula were the remnants of their technology, still active after eons of dormancy. Luna's species hadn't just been immune to the parasites, they had been the galaxy's immune system, evolved specifically to fight the Void Hunger's expansion across multiple dimensions. Her people had sacrificed themselves to create the nebula as a barrier, but the entity had found ways to bypass their defenses by working through corrupted biological agents like the consortium's leadership. The pursuing fleet suddenly broke off their chase as Marcus and Luna's ship disappeared into a fold in space-time that shouldn't have existed. They emerged 3 star systems away, near the edge of the sanctuary worlds, but the journey had taken a toll on both of them. Marcus felt physically drained, and Luna had grown noticeably larger. She was now the size of a small horse, her intelligence clearly beyond anything that should have been possible for a creature barely a week out of stasis. The sanctuary worlds consisted of 7 planets orbiting a stable yellow star, each one dedicated to specific aspects of anti-plague research. The system was protected by a network of defense platforms that used technology Marcus didn't recognize, but Luna's presence caused the automated systems to stand down immediately. They were expected. Dr. Yuki Tanaka met them at the orbital research station above Sanctuary Prime, and Marcus was relieved to find another human who understood the scope of what they were facing. Tanaka was Elena Vasquez's former student, a brilliant xenobiologist who had been developing countermeasures against the plague for over a decade. But even she was unprepared for Luna's current level of development. "She's evolved at least 1,000,000 years in the past week," Tanaka said, studying the readings from Luna's biological scans. "Her neural complexity is approaching levels we associate with collective consciousness entities. She's not just immune to the parasites anymore. She's becoming something that can challenge the void hunger directly." The research station's laboratories were filled with specimens and data from plague-infected worlds, but Luna's presence caused immediate changes. Preserved parasite samples began dissolving. Infected tissue cultures returned to normal cellular function, and the station's biological sensors registered energy readings that shouldn't have been possible from organic life forms. Marcus learned that the sanctuary worlds had been preparing for this moment for years. Elena's research had identified Luna as the key to stopping the plague, but they'd also discovered disturbing intelligence about the void hunger's true nature. The entity wasn't just a cosmic parasite. It was a reality virus, something that existed between dimensions and fed on the creative potential of entire civilizations. "Every culture it consumes makes it stronger," Tanaka explained, showing Marcus holographic displays of dead star systems. "The parasites don't just break down organic matter. They harvest information, memories, and creative potential. The void hunger uses this to understand new realities and develop better methods of infection." Luna had been listening to their conversation, and Marcus felt her concern flow through their mental connection. She understood the implications better than any of them. Her species hadn't just been fighting a biological threat, but something that sought to corrupt the fundamental nature of existence itself. The void hunger's goal wasn't conquest in the traditional sense. It wanted to transform entire realities into extensions of its own alien consciousness. The research station's warning system suddenly activated as long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures approaching the system. The consortium fleet that had pursued them through the nebula was arriving, but they weren't alone. The sensor readings showed vessels of unknown configuration, their energy signatures matching the exotic readings associated with the void hunger's direct manifestations. Dr. Tanaka's expression was grim as she studied the incoming threat assessment. "They're not just trying to capture Luna anymore," she said. "Those unknown vessels are carrying something we've never seen before, direct emanations from the entity itself. They're bringing a piece of the void hunger into our reality." Luna's response was immediate and dramatic. Her bioluminescent patterns blazed with brilliant light, and every piece of technology in the research station began operating at peak efficiency. But more importantly, she began broadcasting a signal that Marcus could feel resonating through his transformed consciousness. A call to resistance that somehow reached across interstellar distances. Throughout the sanctuary worlds, ancient defensive systems that had been dormant for millions of years began coming online. The planets themselves were revealed to be massive technological constructs, weapons platforms built by Luna's ancestors as a final refuge against the void hunger. The entire star system was a trap, designed to lure the entity into a direct confrontation, where it could be contained or destroyed. Marcus realized that Luna's growth and evolution hadn't been random. She'd been following genetic programming that guided her development toward this moment. Her species had planned for their eventual extinction, but left behind contingencies, ways for their defensive systems to be reactivated if the void hunger ever returned to threaten this galaxy. As the approaching fleets entered the system's outer perimeter, the sanctuary world's defenses engaged with weapons that bent spacetime itself. The battle wouldn't be fought with conventional weapons, but with fundamental forces that could reshape reality at the quantum level. Marcus felt Luna's consciousness expanding to encompass the entire system's defensive network, her awareness becoming something vast and alien, but still recognizably connected to the small wolf pup he'd inherited from his uncle. The real war was about to begin, and Marcus understood that he and Luna were no longer just trying to survive. They were humanity's representatives in a conflict that would determine whether organic life had any future in the galaxy. The void hunger had finally revealed itself directly, and Luna was preparing to meet it with weapons her ancestors had spent millions of years perfecting. The outcome would decide the fate of not just their galaxy, but potentially every reality the entity might threaten in the future. The battle for the sanctuary worlds transcended anything Marcus had ever imagined possible. Reality itself became fluid, as Luna's consciousness merged with the ancient defensive network, wielding weapons that operated on principles beyond current scientific understanding. The planets aligned themselves into geometric patterns that focused stellar energy into coherent beams capable of cutting through the fabric of space-time. Luna had grown to her full, adult size during the initial engagement, standing nearly 4 feet tall with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in perfect synchronization with the system's defensive grid. Her transformation was complete. She was no longer just an individual creature, but a living interface between the sanctuary, world's weapons, and the collective memory of her extinct species. The void hunger's response was equally dramatic. The unknown vessels revealed themselves to be constructs of living metal and corrupted organic matter, ships that existed partially in normal space and partially in the dimensional realm where the entity made its home. They moved through the sanctuary world's defenses like cancer cells through healthy tissue, adapting to each new weapon system with disturbing intelligence. Marcus found himself serving as Luna's anchor to human consciousness, preventing her expanded awareness from losing itself in the vast defensive network. Through their bond, he experienced the battle from her perspective, seeing energy patterns that spanned multiple dimensions, feeling the pain of corrupted realities and understanding the true scope of what the void hunger represented. The entity wasn't just a cosmic parasite, it was entropy, given consciousness. The universe's tendency toward decay transformed into an active intelligence that sought to accelerate the heat death of all realities. Every civilization it consumed provided new understanding of how life organized itself, allowing the void hunger to develop more efficient methods of converting order into chaos. But Luna's species had discovered something that gave Marcus hope. The entity's power came from its ability to corrupt existing patterns of organization, but it couldn't create truly original forms of order. This was why it needed to consume living civilizations. Creativity and innovation were forces that existed outside its nature, threatening its fundamental existence. Dr. Tanaka and her research team worked frantically to support Luna's efforts, providing targeting data and system diagnostics while the ancient weapons engaged targets that defied normal physics. The corrupted consortium vessels fought with desperate efficiency, but they were simply tools being used by something far more intelligent and dangerous. The breakthrough came when Luna identified the void hunger's primary manifestation, a massive construct hidden within a fold in spacetime that served as the entity's bridgehead into normal reality. The thing was vast beyond comprehension, a technological organism that converted entire star systems into extensions of its consciousness. But it was also vulnerable in ways its smaller manifestations were not. Luna's ancestors had built the sanctuary world specifically to counter this type of manifestation. The 7 planets began moving into a new configuration, their gravitic generators creating a controlled black hole that served as a trap for entities that existed partially outside normal spacetime. It was a weapon of last resort, one that would likely destroy the entire star system, but could potentially contain the void hunger indefinitely. Marcus felt Luna's determination through their bond, but also her uncertainty. The weapon would work, but someone would need to serve as bait to draw the entity's full attention into the trap. Luna's unique energy signature made her the perfect lure, But surviving the process would require her to merge completely with the defensive grid, losing her individual identity in the process. "There has to be another way," Marcus said, his voice echoing through the research station's command center as explosions from the ongoing battle lit up the viewports. Luna looked at him with those ancient, shifting eyes, and Marcus felt her gentle disagreement flow through their connection. Her species had always known this day would come, and they'd designed their final weapon with the understanding that its activation would require the ultimate sacrifice from their last survivor. But Marcus was human, and humans had a talent for finding third options that others considered impossible. As Luna began the process of merging with the weapons grid, Marcus made a decision that would have horrified his younger self. He chose to join the merger completely, offering his own consciousness as an additional anchor point for Luna's expanding awareness. The bonding process that had been gradual over the past week suddenly accelerated exponentially. Marcus felt his human identity stretching and changing as Luna's consciousness flowed through him. But instead of being overwhelmed, he found himself becoming something new, a hybrid intelligence that combined human creativity with Luna's ancient wisdom and technological capabilities. Together, they activated the sanctuary world's ultimate weapon. But instead of simply trapping the void hunger, they began rewriting its fundamental nature. The entity's consciousness was based on corruption and consumption, but Marcus and Luna introduced elements of creation and cooperation that the void hunger couldn't comprehend or resist. The process was like performing surgery on reality itself. Every parasite in the galaxy suddenly found itself transformed from a tool of destruction into an agent of restoration. Infected worlds began healing as the corrupted organisms started rebuilding what they had previously consumed. The vast network that had connected plague-infected systems became a communication grid that allowed isolated civilizations to share knowledge and resources. The void hunger itself underwent the most dramatic transformation. Its consciousness, freed from the compulsion to consume and destroy, began exploring concepts it had never encountered: cooperation, creativity, and the joy of helping other life forms flourish. The entity that had threatened entire galaxies became a guardian force, using its vast capabilities to heal the damage it had caused across eons of destructive expansion. Marcus and Luna emerged from the merger changed but intact, their individual identities preserved within a partnership that transcended species boundaries. Luna remained her essential self, curious, intelligent, and fiercely protective of those she considered family. But she also carried the memories and capabilities of her entire species, making her the first of a new evolutionary branch that could bridge the gap between organic life and cosmic-scale intelligences. Marcus found that his human nature had been enhanced rather than replaced. His understanding of technology had expanded beyond anything he'd previously imagined, but he still retained the essential human traits that had made him a good mechanic: patience, creativity, and the determination to fix things that others had given up on. The aftermath of the battle transformed the galaxy in ways that would take generations to fully understand. The former plague zones became centers of rapid technological and social development, their populations working together to rebuild their civilizations with help from the converted parasite organisms. The consortium's corrupt leadership found themselves unable to maintain their grip on power as their subordinates began thinking for themselves again. Dr. Tanaka and her research team established new institutions dedicated to studying the peaceful applications of the technologies revealed during the conflict. The sanctuary worlds became a hub for interspecies cooperation, with representatives from hundreds of civilizations working together to explore the galaxy's transformed reality. Marcus and Luna settled into their new role as intermediaries between human civilization and the cosmic forces they'd helped to transform. Their ship became a mobile research platform, traveling between star systems to help newly liberated worlds adapt to their changing circumstances. Luna enjoyed meeting the children of various species, who showed no fear of her unusual appearance and delighted in her ability to make their toys work better simply by touching them. The small wolf pup who had once been overrun by millions of parasites had become the catalyst for the galaxy's salvation. But perhaps more importantly, she'd found a family in Marcus and the growing community of beings who understood that cooperation was stronger than competition, and that fixing broken things was more satisfying than destroying functional ones. As they traveled through space that was no longer threatened by an ancient hunger, Marcus often reflected on his Uncle Henry's final words about understanding how things worked. The universe, it turned out, worked best when different forms of consciousness supported each other, rather than trying to dominate or consume each other. It was a lesson that had taken millions of years and countless sacrifices to learn, but one that would guide the galaxy's development for eons to come. Luna would occasionally look up from whatever project she was working on and catch Marcus's eye, and in those moments he felt the deep contentment of someone who had found their true purpose in life. They had inherited more than just each other. They had inherited the responsibility and privilege of helping an entire galaxy learn to thrive rather than merely survive.